The day I signed my name on the supervisor's line, they handed me a silver badge, a ring of keys that looked older than the dam itself, and a sheet of paper. Laminated so many times, the corners were rounded smooth. The laminate smelled like old water and vinegar. The woman from HR held it like it was too heavy for one piece of paper, and set it in my hands with both of hers. "These are local protocols," she said. "Everyone in ops follows them. Don't improvise." I thought it would be lockout tagout reminders and federal boilerplate. What I read felt like a prank or a dare. Do not look directly into the spillway between 11:11 p.m. and 3:03 a.m. Keep your light on the catwalk grating, never on the water. The siren has 3 patterns. If it wails 3 long with no strobe, do not evacuate. If it chirps once with a strobe, evacuate everyone. If you hear nothing and the strobe flashes red-white tread, get under the control desk and cover your ears. The river level monitors will occasionally show 000. Switch to battery bus B and sit still. Do not make calls on the landline. If you see a man in an orange vest on the downstream rocks after midnight, do not wave. Go back inside. Lock the tail race door. Never say the river's old name out loud after dark. If a vendor or visitor says it, correct them. If they insist, escort them off property. If the fish ladder counts more than 12 trout in a minute, shut the counting camera off and leave a quarter on the threshold. The door behind the level 2 office will be unlocked from 2:17 to 2:23. Do not open it. If it is open, close it without looking inside. If you smell ozone and citrus in the control room and the hair on your arms lifts, step into the battery room and count to 14. The penstock stairs have chalk marks. If you find 11, add 1 with your thumb. If you find fewer than 11, leave immediately. If a contractor asks you to release water for the sound, deny the request. Call me. If you can't reach me, call no one. If the PA plays "The Water is Wide" without a page from ops asking for it, shut the PA off at the breaker and pour salt on the floor by the main door. If you hear your own voice on channel 7 asking for access, switch the radio to 0. There is a 0. Click past 8 and wait. M. Under the list, a single initial. "Who's M?" I asked. "Marsh," the HR woman said. "Maintenance chief, 37 years. Retired last month." "Local protocols," I said, holding the laminate like it might bite. "Is this a joke?" Her eyes flicked to the glass wall where the spillway ran like a moving road beyond the lobby. "No." The dam's turbine hall hummed like a cathedral without choir or pews, just concrete, steel, and a deep vibration that made your ribs remember what a drum is for. The head of operations, a square man named Kincaid with a mustache so neat it looked glued on, walked me through the parts everyone in town knows by rumor and postcard but never actually sees. Control room with its banks of screens. The governor cabinets that look like coffins for robots. The penstock doors that bulge and sweat. The catwalks that tremble a hair under your boots. "Big river," he said conversationally as we crossed an overhead bridge with an unkind view. "Forgives a lot if you respect it. If you don't, it never forgets." "I've done hydros before," I said. "Upstate. Smaller river, older facility. Nothing like this." He tapped the laminate wear ID, slid it half under my clipboard, like a kid hiding a comic book. "Then take those seriously. Some of them are superstition." Superstition is what old hands call things they've seen but can't diagram. "You mean like don't whistle on the stage. I mean, like, never look into the spillway after 11:11. You try. You'll understand why that's a rule and not a suggestion. I almost asked why 11:11. Palindromes make humans talk. Instead, I nodded, because he clearly was joking, and because everyone else I passed had a similar laminate in their back pocket or clipped in the window of their locker. The rules were part of the uniform. My first night on swing shift, I stood at the tall window of the control room and watched the town across the river at dusk like a model under a glass dome. Our dam changed the town's heartbeat. You could see it in the way the restaurants pulsed with people when we throttled back and the last fisherman on the bank reeled up when we opened a gate and the water rose like a breath under the dark. The town never thought about us. Not really. People don't think about lungs unless they gasp. At 11:08, I read Rule 1 and told myself to ignore it. At 11:10, I checked my watch and felt stupid. At 11:11, on the dot, an old habit made my hand lift the flashlight so the beam fell through the glass, onto the spillway lip, onto the sheet of water, sliding over and down and into roar. The light flattened the surface, and for a second I saw not the water, but the reflection caught in it, my face, pale in the glass, and behind my face offset half a beat the control room with a man in my chair, except not in the chair, standing, one hand on the back of it, like he'd been there a long time, and didn't quite remember how to sit. I lowered the light, and the reflection stitched itself back to mine. My mouth did a dumb laugh that convinced nobody. I put the flashlight on the desk, switched it off, and made myself breathe like my breathing was the metronome for the river. At 11:14, the downstream camera blinked, and the feed rolled like film burning. The picture steadied, and there in the tail race, a man in an orange vest stood on the rocks where no one stands without a helmet and a radio set and a reason. He stared up with a patience that read as almost polite. I started to lift my hand, an automatic hello, and Rule 4 put my palm down on the desk so hard it made the pencil jump. I did the lock tour anyway. The tail race door had a chill around it that wasn't night air. I slid the bolt and pushed on the steel, even though it was already shut, because you do that. Check once more, like meaning it changes the world. Channel 7 on the radio coughed up a static that had words in it, like someone had poured letters into a blender. Ops to super, I said, out of habit. My voice answered from Channel 7. Not how the radio makes you sound to others. My voice the way it sounds inside your head when you rethinking about whether to say something. It said my name twice, and then asked to be let into the gallery, calm, a little amused. The way I sound when I don't want anyone to know I'm rattled. Rule 12, switch to 0. There is a 0. Click past 8, and wait. 8 clicks. The dial wanted to stop there. I turned my wrist, and it slid one more detent into a dead zone. The radio went quiet, like a church, when someone drops a hymn book. The hairs on my forearms pressed up like they were trying to leave. The siren hiccuped then, a single chirp, and the strobe over the door flashed once white hot in the corner of my eye. Protocol, said one chirp with strobe, meant evacuate everyone. Rule 2 said the same, but there was no page from ops on the PA, no alarm thread on the monitor, just that bright blink, and my heartbeat stalled. I keyed the mic to call the floor, and then remembered Rule 3. When the river level shows 000, switch to battery bus B, and do not make calls on the landline. On the main screen, the column where the headwater reads out 3 numbers in a polite green font had rolled to 3 zeros. Not error, oh, as if the river had decided it had no depth at all. Kincaid came through the door with coffee and a face like flint. He saw the screen and didn't even spill. "Busby," I said, "already moving." "I know," he said, moving the other way. We'd never rehearsed this, we knew anyway. When the control room flipped from grid to battery, the hum changed, an octave lower. The lights went a little yellow. In the quiet of the new hum, the HVAC shuddered hard and stopped. My ears popped like we were coming down in a plane. "Do not call," Kincaid said, eyes on the window that looked over the dam into dark. "We wait. We do not look into the water. We sit still." "It's a prank," I said, because my mouth needs to be difficult when my body is afraid. He didn't look at me. "We don't prank at night." The smell came then. Ozone, that sharp after-thunder smell, and oranges. Not perfume, peel, pith, the way your nails smell when you scrape a rind. Rule 8, into the battery room, count to 14. I left Kincaid in the hum and stepped into a square room with 4 big boxes of industrial chemistry and a lot of signs, explaining what to do if you swallow acid. I shut the door behind me and leaned on it because I didn't like that. I couldn't see him. I closed my eyes and counted slow. At 11, something huge moved somewhere below me, so far below the floor that the feeling came up through the soles, not the ears. It turned like a creature rolling in sleep. The orange smell thinned, and the ozone went away, like someone opened a window in another wing. I reached 14, breathed twice more, because I wanted to keep counting, and opened the door. The 0 had rolled to 112, like nothing had happened. The siren didn't chirp again. The strobe didn't flash. Kincaid stood with both hands on the desk and stared at the spillway glass, the way you stare at a snake until it leaves. "Was that?" I started. "If you say anything like normal, I'll write you up for sarcasm," he said. "You followed the rule." "Yes, that's why you still have your hearing." The next morning, HR gave me a parking access sticker and a ball cap with the utility logo. I wore the hat for 5 minutes before the brim felt like a lie and put it in my desk. The town felt closer when I drove home, tired and hollow. The river past the dam looked obedient. That obedience was part of why I didn't tell my brother what the rules were when he asked if the hydro gig was boring. "It's lots of checklists," I said, and that was not false. On day 6, Marsh came back. Not in the way that sentence sounds. He came to work in jeans and a shirt with his name embroidered over the pocket. He was smaller than I imagined, from the letter M, lean, with a face that had more lines than a contour map. He shook my hand in that gentle way old hands have that says they once could crush things easily, and Dan T need to prove it. "How's the laminate treating you?" he said. "I keep it near me," I said. "That's the way." He looked around the control room, like a man who had moved out of a house but still knows where all the light switches are. "You opened the battery room." "Yes." "Good. It's bolted to the part of the building that wasn't modernized. When the old air passes through, modern parts want to talk too much." "What's old air?" "It's not ours," he said. "Hasn't been since before concrete. Hard to breathe. Don't worry. It comes and goes. Mostly goes. Do you believe all of this? Or are we humoring whoever wrote the sheet before you?" "I wrote the sheet," he said, without annoyance. "I wrote it the way a man writes down the exits he finds in a burning building when he docent expects to be able to speak in a minute." He put a hand on the window and left a print like frost. Never look at the spillway after 11. You see what it wants you to see. And what does it want me to see? He studied me as if I were a chart with a hidden number. Favorite things, things you'll lean toward. If it's kind to you, it shows you who you miss most, so you forget to step back from the edge. If it's unkind, it shows you that you are already down there. That night, a contractor with a camera around his neck and a man bun under his hard hat leaned over the counter and asked if we could open 2 gates just a little because his client wanted this very specific roar. Rule 10 had the answer. Deny the request, call me. If you can't reach me, call no one. It's all arranged, he said, dropping names. We just need 30 seconds. No, I said. Are you really going to be that guy? He said, amused contempt sliding across his mouth. Power to the people. Let's make it pretty. The town likes pretty. The town likes not having the river where the river doesn't belong, I said. And Kincaid moved behind me like a quiet wall, and the contractor decided maybe he'd use old footage instead. When he left, Kincaid said, "The river doesn't care how it sounds. If people want to hear it sing, they should listen when it chooses to sing." The fish ladder camera glitched that same week. Its clicker ticked like a Geiger counter, and the screen, where the fish count shows a pleasant green number, rolled from 007 to 012 in under a second, and then 2027, so fast the digits blurred. I watched the video feed and saw not fish but shapes, the size of fish, the color of aluminum. They weren't quite swimming, they were being pulled. Or perhaps they were very polite and allowing themselves to be counted. Rule 6, shut the camera off. Leave a quarter on the threshold. I did. The number stopped at 033 and held. No one asked where my quarter went. In the morning, there was a dull circle in the paint on the threshold where it had been. On a Tuesday, at 2:16 a.m., the door behind the level 2 office rattled. No wind, no vibration from the turbines. A careful testing, like knuckles on wood when you don't want to scare a sleeping house. I looked at my watch and watched the second hand climb the hill toward 17. The latch clicked. The door handle turned. It swung open just enough that darkness had a shape. Rule 7. Do not open it. If it is open, close it without looking inside. Who's there? I said, because I am a fool. My voice came back a fraction too late and asked if I was in there. I pushed the door closed with my shoulder and slid the bolt. The handle rattled once, not hard, just to confirm a fact, and stilled. At 23, the weight went away, and the door was just a door again. In the morning, the inside paint had a brownish smear at hip height, the exact shape of a wet raincoat sliding by. I started wearing earplugs on graveyards, not to block sound, to muffle my name when my name came from strange places. 2 weeks in, a city councilman came with a campaign photographer. He wanted to be filmed on the catwalk above the spillway at twilight, with the lights on and the water making a pretty line of white. He held the lightweight helmet we gave him by the strap, like a purse he was keeping clean for someone else. "I'm not taking you out past 11, I said. "Why?" "Because it's not safe. It's water. It's an edge and a lot of gravity," I said. "You want a safety briefing or a story?" He wanted the story. I gave him the briefing. He rolled his eyes and walked astonished into the night, like a person who has never heard water roar because he has always been on the side where the roar is a rumor. His photographer was polite and quiet and filmed a lot of concrete. They were back the next day. The photographer looked pale around the edges, like paper left near a window. He leaned over. He said, He wanted it on his phone. He said he could see something. He said his wife was down there waving. His wife died, Kincaid said later, closing a file. 3 years ago, cancer. They were happy. You put that kind of hole near moving water, and it gets ideas. Is he in a hospital bed with the worst sunburn I've seen in autumn? And he'll quit the council before spring. They all do when the river shows them their favorite selves. The penstock stairs were my least favorite ritual. The chalk marks were as advertised. Crude white slashes against damp concrete you have to bend to see because the light is bad and the stairwell curls like a snail shell. Some days there were 11, some days 10. If I found 11, I pressed my thumb into a soft place above the last, and left a 12th, and my thumb came away gritty and gray, like I had smudged the line between numbers and bones. If I found fewer than 11, I did what Rule 9 says, leave. I never asked why 11 matters. Some numbers make me superstitious now. On the last Thursday of my first month, the PA in the turbine hall started playing music, and no one had paged ops. The water is wide, a tired, sweet version, like a piano in an old bar. The first note landed like a coin on metal, and the second slid slightly sharp, and I felt my molars ache with it. Rule 11, shut the PA at the breaker and pour salt at the main door. Kincaid grabbed the ladder for the breaker, and I ran for the little kitchenette and the blue carton of pickling salt we use to thaw the steps when they freeze. I poured a thin line from the door to the yellow safety stripe, and the music hiccuped like it had taken a sip of something too strong. I poured more, a circle. Kincaid killed the breaker, and the hall went back to humming, and nobody sang about water wanting to be wide. What happens if you don't pour the salt? I asked, after my heart slowed. You spend the night with the dead at your elbow, asking you to hold the door while they go look at something outside, he said, and rolled his shoulders like a man who needed to sleep 12 hours and would get 3. Marsh came in again the night after and sat on a stool with a Tupperware full of curry and rice. He ate with the neat care of someone who's tasted every version of hunger there is. He watched the glass with his back to the nearest door. When does it stop? I asked. When you stop needing it, he said. What is it? Why do you assume it's one thing? Because the list has one initial, I said, and he smiled around his spoon. A week later, they sent the auditor. He wore a suit that made our concrete look indecent. He introduced himself with a fast, shiny name and talked about optics and liability and best practices and the friendly culture of safety. He asked to see the protocols. I handed him the official binder. He asked to see the other list. He said it like a man who has been briefed by people who read reports with annexes. I gave him the laminate. He read it once, and his mouth kinked. Charming, he said. I understand the power of institutional lore. I worry about codifying it. These items risk creating a culture of magical thinking. You think you can talk this place into being just a machine, Kincaid said from the doorway, his mustache calm. You can't. You're not a priest, the auditor said, irritated. You're a supervisor. Then audit the turbines, I said, handing him a hardit. Not the stories. He did audit the turbines. He walked with me under the belly of the generator that makes half the town. S-lights, honest, and checked a box that says rotation nominal and another that says bearing temp within spec. He asked good, clean questions. He took his hard hat off on the catwalk like the view proved something he believed about himself. At 2:18 a.m., he went to the level 2 office to make a call. I heard the door behind the office rattle. I was halfway down the corridor when I heard him say, "Who's there?" And then the handle turn and his voice soften the way men soften when they imagine a woman is on the other side of the door. Rule 7 beat me to him. I put my shoulder into the metal and shouted his name. The space beyond it had a wrong temperature. He stepped back, offended. "What are you doing?" he said. "You don't open that door," I said, and he stared like I had insulted his degree. "This is ludicrous. This is a door. It's a door for 6 minutes," I said, "between 2:17 and 2:23. Then it's a wall again. If you want to be a stuck memory, open it." He stared at the clock. His jaw worked. The minutes moved. At 23, the handle cooled under my hand in a way you can't fake. I let go of the breath I'd been holding, and my hands shook like a joke I didn't get. The auditor's face went sloppy. He laughed for himself, not at me. "I'm filing a note," he said later, a little hoarse. "It will say the door is to remain locked at all times." That's a milder sentence than the door would have given you, Marsh said from the doorway, and the auditor startled because he hadn't realized Marsh was there. People don't see him if he doesn't want to be seen. The river taught him that. "You're all insane," the auditor said, trying to recover his balance with anger. "You talk to this place like it's a person." Marsh looked past him into the black glass and said, kindly, "We talk like we're people." The worst night came with no weather. Clear, sharp, cold, that makes sound carry. The water ran black and polite, and the town looked etched. The spillway whispered. The siren was quiet. The zeros didn't come. I started to believe we might coast through a night without a clause from the laminate asserting itself. At 1:33, the penstock door boomed, not like a hand, like a shoulder. Concrete dust sifted down from a seam I hadn't noticed before. The battery room lights flickered without permission. Channel 7 coughed, and then my voice said my mother's name and asked how she was sleeping. I switched to 0 and counted my heartbeat, and it went too fast against the wrong rhythm. The downstream camera showed nothing at first. Then it showed people, 3 of them on the rocks where no one stands at night. 2 men and a child in a hoodie. They sat together like a family, waiting for an appointment. They turned their faces up together, and there was nothing sentimental in it. They did not wave. They just wanted to be seen. Then the frame rolled and reset, and the rocks were empty again. The siren wailed 3 long pulses with no strobe. Rule 2 said, "Do not evacuate." My stomach said, "Run." Kincaid said, "Do not look into the water." And I kept my eyes on the green headache of the monitor. The PA clicked, somebody's thumb on a talk button. A man's voice note. Our sang a line of the water is wide with a child's harmony that came in half a beat late. It was pretty. It was so pretty I wanted to cry. I cut the breaker. "Salt," I said, and poured a circle. What happens if Kincaid started, and something on the roof moved a length like a whale, and we both shut up because we didn't want to give it a name? The door behind the level 2 office rattled and then went still. The air smelled like a match blown out and then like oranges. "Battery room," Kincaid said. And we divided the moves without speaking. He took the radio to remind it to be dignified. I took the door. In the battery room, something old breathed by, and the sound took a layer of dust with it. The zeros flicked on the main board, and then rolled to 444, and then 112. Outside, night reset itself, and the PA died, and the siren pretended it had been silent all along. The downstream camera showed only water sliding away. Sometimes there are nights like that that stack themselves into a wall behind your eyes. You dream of hands on steel and voices behind your voice. You wake with rind under your nails and salt on your boots. You drink coffee like it's a sacrament. You add a chalk mark when you find 11. You leave when you find 10. The day the town almost drowned, it began with a phone call. A man from the state new voice, full of mandates, said we needed to hold more water for the regional grid because of a forecasted cold snap. He used words like dispatch and load. He did not use words like margin or head. He did not ask about the laminate. He did not know about the time the zeros sit on the board like teeth. We'll do what the dam can do, I said, and hung up with the itch that comes when someone has told you to pull a heavy thing and then left you alone with it. We held. The river swelled benignly like a chest before a song. We cut gates to keep downtown dry. The fishermen muttered and shrugged because fishermen have learned how to shake their heads at both God and men. After sunset, the river took its own counsel. It didn't rise. It didn't drop. It stalled, a thing that shouldn't happen to moving water. The monitors didn't show 0. They held at 222 and quivered. The turbines hummed in a pitch I'd never heard. The turbines don't like a stalled river. That hum gets under your teeth like a warning from a good dog. Let it go, Marsh said quietly, behind us, even though he wasn't on shift, even though he wasn't in the building when I turned around to check. Let it go now. The grid, I started. The town, he said. I opened 2 gates, 3 clicks. The river considered this, and then slid forward with the sound a sleeping person makes when someone lets go of the edge of the sheet and the blanket pulls itself straight. The hum eased. The monitors jogged 1 notch, and then another. The town breathed. The line went off in the state office 15 minutes later, and a voice like the last one's older brother asked what we thought we were doing, and I said, not drowning the people who vote for you, and ended the call. Kincaid laughed once, like a bark. That night left new marks. When I walked the catwalk at 3:10, a white chalk slash on the penstock stair was wet. Behind the level 2 door, a breath moved slow, as if it were sleeping. The downstream rocks held footprints that filled with water from below, not from rain. The town never knew about that night. They don't need to. They noticed the lights flicker once at 8:12 and cursed the utility under their breath. They went back to their dinners and their shows. They said the river looked high and pretty the next day and took photos. They didn't smell oranges. They didn't count to 14 in a room with batteries while something old and not ours passed through the walls and stayed just long enough to be remembered by the dust. There are things I Haven T told you because you won T. Believe them, or I Dan T. Know how to write them so they sound the way they felt. The time the fish ladder clicked 2013 in 1 second and the screen froze and a child laughed on the PA. The night a man in an orange vest lifted both hands in a way that meant I am not coming any closer, and you shouldn't either. The morning a contractor dropped a socket wrench and it didn't fall. It hung 2 inches above the grating and turned once like it was thinking, and then set itself down. He quit that afternoon. I signed his form and did not try to keep him. I have learned to say the river's new name like a password, and the old one like a curse in my head that I never put into my mouth after dark. I have learned to keep quarters in my pocket when I never carried cash in my life. I have learned that salt is not just for ice. I have learned there is a channel 0. I have learned It is not empty. I have learned to not listen to the channel where my own voice says things I want to hear. You want hooks. You want the thing that will keep you from clicking to the next story while you sit in a lit room with your back to a wall you trust not to move. Here is the hook. The river knows you. If you love someone and that love has a shape that can be drawn on water, the river can draw it and put it just over the lip of the spillway. So you lean, and the concrete under your boots says, "We are old but not that old," and the next rule in your head is the one that keeps you alive. Do not look, do not look, do not look. Here is another. The door you think is a door for 6 minutes, and then a wall again. And somewhere on the other side of it, a room remembers everyone who opened it and did not come back. Sometimes when I walk by at noon, I can feel heat on that door like breath. In the afternoon, it is cold. I do not put my ear to it. And this, if the siren wails 3 times with no strobe, stay. If it chirps once with a strobe, run. If it flashes red-white tread and makes no sound at all, get under the desk and press your palms over the cartilage of your ears and open your mouth. Sound can break you. Silence can too. You learn that here. There are 12 chalk slashes on the penstock stair today. I pressed my thumb into a soft place and made the 13th. The whirl of my skin fits the limestone like it knew this would happen. "Why 12? I asked Marsh once. "Why not 10? "Because 12s stack into circles," he said. "10s stack into lines." "Lines are good," I said. "For us," he said. "Not for it. You think I'm trying to scare you. I am. You think I'm trying to make rules out of superstition. I am. If I could write software and make this place behave, I would. If a checklist alone could keep you breathing, I would laminate it and never say another word about oranges or music. But a dam is a bargain. You hold a river. It holds you back. You respect it. It remembers your face and your name and the way your mother says that name on the phone when she leaves you a message you listen to at noon on a Tuesday, because night is not for voices you love. The letter M on the laminate looks like a mountain, like the pair of piers that hold up the long bridge at the top of the dam. Marsh doesn't carry his own copy anymore. He doesn't need the rules. He is one. He walks the catwalk with one palm on the rail, and the river is polite to him the way wild dogs are polite to old men who fed them as pups. He sits in the break room and eats curry, and everyone else is quieter without feeling like they've been told to be. One afternoon, he handed me a second laminate. Not a copy, another list. 8 holes, punched down the margin, like someone had started a game of cribbage with himself and then lost the board. The rules looked like mine, but the sentences were different, shorter. Don't make it sing. Don't make it pretty. Pay when you don't understand. Count when you're scared. Shut the door. Don't make it choose. If it waits, wait longer. Don't be the reason anyone leans. "What's rule 8? I asked. "There are 100 reasons. You'll know," he said. "You'll do the math." I keep both sheets in my back pocket, laminate warm from my hip. I am not a priest. I'm the supervisor at a hydro dam with a budget, a payroll, and a town that needs my decisions to be boring. Some nights they are. Some nights the river smells like lightning and fruit, and my mouth fills with salt and numbers, and I count to 14 like I'm teaching a child to step on the spots across a creek. If you ever visit for the tour, you'll see the good parts. We'll tell you about megawatts and fish ladders and flood control. We'll keep you behind the yellow line. We'll smile and point. You'll take a selfie with water behind you that makes your hair look interesting. You'll go home to a house we helped keep dry last night by opening a gate 3 clicks when a voice you didn't hear told us to hold. If you ever work here, you'll get a ring of keys that keep you safe and trick you into thinking you in charge. You'll get a laminate that smells like old vinegar and old water. You'll laugh. Don't laugh. Read. Memorize. Do not improvise. If you hear your voice on Channel 7 after midnight asking for the tailray store, switch to 0. If the PA sings to you without a page, cut the breaker and pour salt in a circle, like you redoing magic, because sometimes magic is just doing the same thing in the same place. Every time something you can diagram touches the world, you are paid to keep in a straight line. Do not look into the spillway after 11:11. If you do, and you see your favorite person or your favorite version of yourself looking up and waving, step back, hold the rail, count to 14, wait longer. Don't be the reason anyone leans. If a man in an orange vest stands on the rocks and lifts his arm, he is not waving, he is measuring. Don't give him a number. And if the door behind the level 2 office swings open from 217 to 223, close it without looking. If you look, it will be polite enough to look back. It will say your name the way your mother says it when she is very, very tired. You will want to hold it open while it goes to look at something outside. Don't shut the door. It is a bargain. It always has been. The town built the dam. The river let it stand. We make lines. It makes circles. We count. It sings. We pay. It forgives what can be forgiven. Some nights it does not forgive. Those are the nights I sit with my back to the control desk, palms over cartilage, mouth open, and count to 14 while the old air rolls through. And when the first thin bird calls at dawn from somewhere that isn't a river, I open my eyes and check the monitors and see 3 numbers that mean a depth we can work with. I go home as the town wakes. I wash my hands. Sometimes, under the nails, there is a little white grit that is not salt, and not chalk, and not paint. I don't ask. I put my laminates on the counter by the badge and the keys and the hat I dan. Teaware and sleep for hours, and dream of a door that is a wall, and a wall that is a door and a number I can press my thumb into and make different. When the phone rings at noon, and my mother's voice leaves my name in my kitchen, I listen. I call her back in daylight and tell her the power plant is fine because that's the name she uses, and I don't tell her that sometimes at night the power plant is not fine, it is a mouth. I tell her to water the plants and wear a hat and that I am getting enough to eat. She tells me a story I've heard before, and the telling becomes a rule. You want a last thing to hold when the video ends and the next one starts. Hold this. If you ever find yourself in the belly of a dam at night with a list in your pocket that smells like vinegar, believe the list. Read the name at the bottom. Imagine a small man with old hands writing it in a room with humming batteries while something big turns below, and honor the math he did so you can add 1 chalk mark and go home. On paper, I supervise a hydroelectric facility and a crew of. In truth, I sit in a lit room with windows and bargain with something that has always been here. Something that can lift a wrench off the grating and set it down. Something that can make a song out of air. Something that knows how your favorite person used to stand when they were alive and where they would be in the world if you leaned. I have my rules. It has its rules. We both try not to make the other choose. And when you drive across our town at night, and the lights are steady, and the river is where it belongs, and the restaurants hum, and the kids in the park throw a frisbee like it's summer, even in October, because this is the one warm day left, know that someone counted to 14 in the dark while something passed through, and they kept the door closed, and they did not make it sing, and they did not make it pretty, and they did not make anyone lean.